Hi, I'm just making some videos, and it's getting into a nice season where I can film things that I've built, including I built everything after destruction. That includes the sunlight, heaps of different things, so that people can actually see things on videotapes. Because, you know, though it's very, very obvious what has happened in the recent past, there are people who seem to want to be prime witnesses to intervene with it, which is really bad. That's why almost everything is actually built in private, almost all of industry, and why there's industry secrets, so that outside people can't intervene. So that when someone's doing something important, such as producing something, other people can't be around to intervene. It's not their right. And I've built probably the most important things on earth. So it's also in my death will that I own them after I die, because I built world time, so I've done a lot of time travel. And so I've turned up in a lot of futures where everything I've built's my own property anyway. And I keep it that way so it's not for a whole bunch of murderers and people who decided that enforced disappearance and killing everyone's their meaning of life, because it really isn't. A whole bunch of false information is not the meaning of life. Anyway, so I'm going to be doing filming about it. The International Convention on Civil Rights is ratified in over 191 nations. It's like 191 in brackets 2. Apparently some nations it could be defined as one or two nations something. But it's in World Disability Rights. So of its own accord, I think it's 175 nations just of its own accord. But then when it's in conjunction with like handful of others. So that's the United Nations disability right thing. So people with any sort of disability have particular rights worldwide. It's 191 in with that. So that's sort of anyway, I've got some spinal damage, so I want a partial pension. I could say I do or don't have a disability. Very sad, some murderers who broke my neck way too many times. I was never punched in the face. They weren't ethical people whereby we had an argument. They attempted to be violent. They were the sort of people that attempted to commit murder while I was asleep, and often tried to break my neck while I was sleeping. So often I didn't sleep there from the time I was like 14. From the time I could possibly go out of the house without being dragged back by criminal maniacs called the police, I would leave every night instead of being around murderers who were attempting to murder while I was asleep. It's safer to go out anywhere. Anyway, I have heaps and heaps of evidence for things. Seriously, my neck, I've got heaps of evidence. I should show medical reports. That is evidence, right? That is not speculation. That is evidence. It's called a medical report that shows it. And yeah, there's a lot of evidence for a lot of things. But though I do like filming, I like showing a whole bunch of things that are really quite relevant to Earth and all sorts of resources that I've built. So they're my property. The International Convention on Civil Rights, anything I build is my own property. It's not someone else's. I'm not sharing it. The sun shines perfectly well in the sky. Nobody else owns it. It's not their right, and it's not their right to have. But sadly, in 2007, there were murderers en masse that wanted to claim that things that I've built around are their right. It's not. So they literally destroyed all sunlight. What was there before is now called Nemesis. So that is the name of what was there before. According to what I've read. But now it's like a dual, almost like a dual planetary system where one of it doesn't shine. We don't have sunshine from that here. And the other one is brand new, and it works in a different way than what people hypothesize. I can do filming, I can show it, but it just means that since 2007, there is excessive difference in planetary alignment and solar system. So it means that the gravitational field in the solar system has changed in hugely measurable ways, showing basically huge numbers of planetary alignments that would happen maybe once every 1,000 years before. Now they're happening almost once every 1 or 2 years. Right, it is a huge difference in gravity on the planets aligning, on the motion that they're working on. Right, so it's a massive measurable effect, otherwise known as evidence. Right, and that measurable gravitational effect only occurs in a particular way, not however someone decided. It's because what was there before was destroyed and a new thing has now been built. Right, that's why. And then that new thing built has changed the entire gravitational method, even though here it's quite measurably the same. It's quite measurably the same everywhere else in the solar system, but it has massively different gravitational effects. Right. So a lot of these things can easily be filmed. They can easily, people can easily see it, that there's huge amounts of physical evidence. So it's not sort of a theory at all. I mean, most of it, all the theories are wrong. The way things really work, I would sit around and play with things in a good way, and they actually physically work differently than what the books say, right? So what the books say isn't the way the actual reality works at all, right? Even though that's the only thing other people can see because it's the only thing they know. It's almost as though they can't think for themselves. A book says something and that's the only way they can see it. Whereas the reality works actually very, very, very differently than what they think, right? Or what the books say. So, I built everything. I built it in like 10 different ways with like 10 different theories of everything. There is never such thing as only one way things work. It's not even how I've built it. And what I've read of past records, it being everything built after destruction before, it was built in a literal 5 separate ways, right, that all sort of work in unison. There is not a one way it works. When I built everything after destruction, I did at least 10 of them that all overlap. It's like trying way too hard to overcompensate for damage. It's like it can be done like this, that, and it's just lathering one on top of the other, on top of the other, on top of the other, on top of the other until it restabilizes, right? Yeah, well, I was doing that, though I built everything after destruction. So I didn't just build it once and there's one way it works. I go, it could work like this, that. And literally layering one on top of the next, on top of the next, on top of the next. And when I was reading about what happened in the past, where someone else had built what was there before, that's what they did, at least 5 completely separate, different ways that don't really, it's not the same way at all. So it never worked according to only one way ever. Nothing I've built does. I mean, I think if I used only one way, it would not support itself or substantialize or be sustainable. I think the whole thing would just fall apart if there's only one way that was used. No, there were at least 10 different ways, and those 10 different ways overlap each other, and they interlock so that it becomes really strong and stable. Right, so it's logic that people never spotted, and I knew it after I'd done it myself. So after I'd done it myself, I thought, oh look, I could build it like this, and totally did. And then, oh, maybe that won't stay properly. I can build it in another way on top of that. I can build an extra thing on top of that. I can build on top of that and on top of that, until it becomes so structured and so stable that it's not going to be destroyed. Right? And so it's just reinforcing it. Like, so I built the actual thing, then reinforcing the structure so it exists. But it's like 10 different, completely different ways, right? Not a way that it works. And then after I did that, is my instinct to just go, oh, look, I'll just make sure. Then I read about what someone else did and it made total sense. It was just like, oh, though they had built what was there before, there's at least 5 completely different ways, and people would only see things in one way. That none of that even really is good engineering. It really isn't the way things work, right? That one way by itself would not substantiate even building a good building in a day, right? It's not an adequate method of its own accord, even for one layer, right? So I decided I should film some things, film some large level resources I've built, all sorts of things that innocent people should know. So it's not left to some cruel maniacs to claim that they have rights, because they don't. All right. Anyway, so it should be fun. But do remember that the Rome Statute is ratified. So no impunity to anyone who is inflicting enforced disappearance onto me. I was born in Western Europe, so I'm not going to be tolerating anyone who is inflicting crimes of the Rome Statute onto me. And the International Convention on Civil Rights is binding in at least 191 nations. Right, so it is binding. All right, let's not pretend it isn't. And it's backed up in the Rome Statute. So though when it first started in the 1960s, people might be allowed to sort of deter from it a bit. Now not really, because it's backed up in the Rome Statute. It's backed up enough so that no. All right. So if they break the law in one, if they break the law in the International Convention on Civil Rights, then they've broken the law in the Rome Statute. So it's now reinforced in 2 completely different things. All right. Anyway, so I should have some fun filming. Hopefully, you guys will have some fun watching it. And hopefully, people can start understanding at least a little bit of the reality of what's around them.